Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of The Author's Journey. I'm your host, Mony. You know, one of the great privileges of hosting this show is not only getting to meet authors with incredible stories, but authors who are also using their books and their message to somehow create change in the world, to, in their own way, make it a better place for all of us and for all of our children. My guest today is just one such individual. I'm so delighted to have on the show today Lindsey Barr. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Good to see you again. Now, Lindsey, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about your story.
So my story. So I am the mother of two children, age 7 and age 10. And when I had my children, I realized that I wanted to go a different direction with my past career. I had been in the government previous to that.
Okay.
And I knew that I just wanted to be with the kids, and I knew that community was really important to me. That kind of, I'd always known that, but having children made that more important.
Okay, so were you someone who was always involved in writing as a child, for example? Were you always creating? Were you always involved in community when you were a child?
Definitely, yes. Yeah. So as a child, and even up to as a teenager, I did want to be an author.
Interesting.
And then I went to business school.
Very
instead
responsible.
Of English, yes, because that was the responsible thing to do. So there wasn't much creative writing done in business school, really. And I still, after business school, had a vision of being the starving artist and moving to Toronto. I grew up in Waterloo, and with a couple of friends, one who was going to be a photographer, and another one who we were all going to get an apartment. And then life just went a different way. I did a co-op term in Ottawa but I did it for the Book Publishing Industry Development Program.
Oh, how interesting.
In the federal government, so that I was still following my love of books. I thought the publishers were just superstars and celebrities I loved, you know, every day that I was there. And then that's when I met my future husband.
Yes.
So I went back to school, finished at Laurier, and then moved up here and kind of skipped the whole starving artist in Toronto part.
Well, you know, one of the things that I enjoyed about your story, because, you know, we've met before and we've spoken, is that you remember the day, even when you were a child, when you actually not only wrote, but published and bound your own book. In fact, I have a copy of that book that I want to show.
The only copy.
The only, this is very rare, very special, limited edition of this story that you wrote yourself and that you bound. If we can see that here, yourself.
Yeah.
So tell me how this came about. How old were you when you wrote this, your first book, and published your own first book?
I think it was grade 6. And it was a program, it was kind of an enrichment program, and there were maybe about 10 or 12 of us selected.
Yeah.
And I remember going up to the mezzanine in the library, and we'd get to go once or twice a week, and we'd work on it. And we had to do the artwork ourselves, and I think you noticed it's typed on a typewriter. I don't remember if I typed it. Yeah. I think the invitation to...
Oh my goodness, yep.
So I don't think
For those of us who remember typewriters and actually typing on the typewriter, so that's what it is.
I think what happened is I probably hand wrote it, and then the teacher leading it typed it up for us, gave us back the paper, and we had to illustrate it. And then we got to read it at Café Bonchois at a very important night, and the mayor was there. So the fact that that's like my most clear memory probably from all my elementary school experience. Yeah. And then when we had our meeting and I brought that up, I was like, I can find it for you. It's right in a drawer. I know exactly where it is. So obviously this was an important piece to my story.
Of your story. It's funny because when you ask somebody, do you remember, you know, when you were a child, but for you, as you say, you knew exactly where that book was and you brought it right out.
I did, yeah.
But, you know, obviously you say that life happened and that you didn't follow your dream of, you know, becoming the starving artist, but you were still somehow involved with books and the book publishing world and the world of creation, obviously. And I know that inspired you in some way to continue writing, because when you had your kids, you mentioned to me, you felt that there was a need for community. Can you tell me about that and what started this whole process of you even thinking about your first book?
Yeah. So I knew in my heart the type of community I wanted to raise my kids in. And it was, you know all your neighbors, the kids can go door to door, knocking, you know, looking to see if there's friends to play with. When they go to the park, there's a crew that they know. All ages, you know, it goes back to, I remember playing out till the streetlights came on, right? And you'd sit and you'd wait for the moms to open the door and say, okay, it's really time to come in. And we always waited till the third time they actually called us, right? And then we'd go in. So it was that feeling. And then I realized that it wasn't just there. That wasn't exactly how the world was anymore. I don't know, just wasn't there. So I thought, well, if I want that, I have to build it. So I started organizing things, organizing even little things like we would do park crawls. So we would park crawls,
so
yeah. So I guess I should say I started by gathering email addresses. I would, if you want to get on my email list for the neighborhood, and people would. I got up to like 170 emails in my neighborhood.
Just by going to the parks and being with other parents and just, wow.
And just asking, just saying like, I've started this, do you want to be on my email list?
Yeah.
And so then I would email out like, here's the schedule for the park crawl. We're going to start at this park at this time. We're going to play for about an hour, and then we'll move to this park. And then sometimes families on the way would say, okay, come in here for a bathroom stop and popsicles, and we moved through the neighborhood. So I just kept trying out things that I wanted to try, that I thought would be a good idea.
Yeah. And so what did that do in terms of helping you focus on what you saw was a need? What need did you see in doing all of this?
Right. So I did see that there was a disconnect, that people didn't know each other, that, and I found I did a lot of reading that kept following a path, and it was community building, and it was even neighborhood design, and it was, where people drive into their garages and go in their house and then come out and drive to work, and they never see their neighbors, and because they don't know their neighbors, their kids can't even walk to the end of the street by themselves because so I did a lot of reading about, you just have to get out there. You have to make use of your public spaces, and you have to say hello when you're out walking.
What a concept.
I know, but it's kind of not the way anymore.
I understand. Yeah. Because I know that the simple act of smiling at someone and just saying good morning and hello is a bit of a lost art. And I understand a little bit, the fears sometimes that people have of reaching out to people, but I understand what you're saying, that this is something that helps build community. This is how we get to know our neighbors and who we are and who they are as well.
Yeah, and it feels good when you're walking down the street and someone says, hello, Lindsay, like they know your name, so I always try to make a point of doing that for other people because I like it.
And you're right, that is how you build community.
Yeah.
Now, the first book that you ended up writing was called Plant a Garden of Kindness.
Yes.
And I know that there's a whole story around this as well.
Yes.
First of all, what inspired you to write this book, To Plant a Garden of Kindness?
So I noticed that I won't take all the credit, our community was getting friendlier. Is the easiest way to put it. And people would do kind things. We would do kind things for others, and others would do kind things for us. For example, I remember one of our neighbors, we were going on a drive somewhere, and they put together like a little care package for the kids, like entertainment for the car ride. It was a small thing, but I was like, so that's one of my acts in my book, right? I was like, that's a good thing. So I just kind of took all these things that I'd seen happening. It's kind of, once you open the box to do this, it multiplies, right? So, and I thought, I'm reading all the terrible things about other communities that don't have this and don't have the connection, and maybe a guidebook would be good. And then the idea just kind of came to me. Fully, it was like 75. Let's do 75. So I sat down and I wrote 75 acts of kindness that kids can do. Really easy things. And I say nearly all of them have been done by us in our community or by others for us in our community.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And then I sent it around to a kind of group of women, of moms in the neighborhood, kind of my review group. And it was my friend Ellen who said, you know what, this should be a journal. Like every act should have its own page.
Right.
Like, that's it, done. Yeah. So it was a group effort.
That's great. Well, one of the things that strikes me with this book is as soon as I looked at it, it's like, oh, this reminds me of this book. Exactly. It reminds me of that same kind of binding, the same kind of look and feel of what you first did when you were in grade 6, also has that kind of feeling here. So did you do everything yourself for this first run of the book?
Yes.
Is that right? So
when the book started, I just said, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. I was working for a great company called Arts Express at the time, who I'm still friendly with, but I'm doing this, so someone else has taken over that. But because of Arts Express, I had a Sharp, like a professional size printer that had been, they're a company in Toronto, and they'd given me the printer up here to use. So I said, can I print my book and pay you for the pages, that I use? And of course, the executive director, Daynell, who is so supportive, said yes. So I was like, okay, I've got the printer. That's so much cheaper than going to Staples, for example, right? I can print it in my own basement. So now I need to bind it. So I went on Kijiji And as the universe works, that day, a $50 binding machine was up for sale. And so I need to buy that. So I went and, I meant to look this up. I can't remember the exact name, but it was something like the Canada Council for Social Humanities or something. And they were to do, the serendipitous thing was they, support writers. So I went and I bought their binding machine. And on top of that, they gave me the box of all their leftover bindings. Oh, wow. And the executive director bought my book. So I think I got out ahead of the $50 I spent on the binding machine. So then I had to look up on the internet how to use this binding machine. And I had a paper cutter. So the way my amazing designer and friend Sarah made this, I had to cut every page. So it was printed double-sided on legal size. Yes. And I would have to cut it down the middle. Wow. And then to bind it, you could only do like 10 at a time, and you'd have to hole punch it and then bind it. So it was a labor of love for the first. And I think I'm estimating about the first 350 copies were done in this format. Wow. I love your resourcefulness. Yes. I love how resourceful you are, and just this can-do attitude that says that, there's something I want to do. I'm going to go ahead and do it. Because a lot of times, despite all of the great resources that authors have at their disposal today, it can be overwhelming to try and figure out how this online, platform works, or how to use CreateSpace, KDP, or even how to work with a printer. So I love the fact that you were just able to take and say, I'm going to just go figure this out. And the finished product is actually still good. It's a good product. Yeah. And I know that what you did from this is you learned from this experience, because obviously you've moved, the next step was trying to make it a little bit more kind of professional, if you want to call it that. And stronger, because I do have to admit that when the kids get to opening it 100 times, I know it rips a little bit. So we moved up. Yeah, spiral binding. Yeah, a little bit slightly more different paper, slightly heavier stock. Yeah. Yeah, is that what it is? Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And who does this for you? Who does this for you? Ottawa Letter Shop. Okay. Does that. So it's local as well. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, I like to support local. And so you're saying that you and your kids have done all of the things, all of the acts of kindness that are in this book. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And do the kids go along with it? Are they happy to do these kinds of acts of kindness? Definitely, yeah. The kids love it. Yeah. They all love it. There's 75. The goal is you pick 52 and you do one a week for a year. That's kind of the program. Fair. Okay, all right. So one a week for a year isn't, too much for families. Yeah. And there's 75, but some might not speak to you, right? So you might not like that one. That might be uncomfortable for you. So there's a selection. Okay. But yeah, no, my kids love it. I find my 10-year-old boy is he's into other things a little bit, but my 7-year-old is like all this still. Yeah. Okay. And all the kids. So I also do after school care, and I regularly have a crew of 7 kids, and I take them, their parents, they're all my friends, and they're lovely, and I take them to a whole bunch of fun things, to try out and do. And one thing I noticed, so even a son, not my son's friend, it's little things like we were at school, and a kind of a construction worker was doing something, and he was moving his stuff, and he dropped a glove, and this boy ran to get it, picked it up, like, excuse me, you dropped your glove, it's just, if you train them young enough to be engaged and to look for ways to help, then they do. It works, right? And you're raising a culture and a society that is grounded in kindness, that is grounded in compassion, which is the kind of society that we're all wishing to live in anyways. Now, I do have to take a quick break. Please stay tuned, everyone, and we will come back to continue our conversation with Lindsey Barr on The Author's Journey.
What a night we have in store. Come on and give me some more. We're gonna shake the floor. I bust down the door. You ain't seen nothing like this. Give me some more. We're gonna settle the score. CM Punk returns to the Octagon. 2 belts on the line. You ain't seen nothing like this.
Hi, I'm Aaron Veach, and I'm a volunteer here at Rogers TV. I've been a volunteer here at Rogers TV for 6 years. I work on Daytime Ottawa, Ottawa Today, Ottawa Experts, and Cultural Window. One of the reasons I like volunteering here at Rogers TV is because I get hands-on experience with a lot of the great new technologies that I love. I'd recommend anyone to volunteer here if they're interested in getting into the TV field.
Hey everyone! everyone, it's Carla from Carla in the Kitchen. Join me every week as I give away some of my top secret recipes. These smell so delicious. We'll see you in the kitchen.
Hi everyone, and welcome to The Author's Journey, where I'm continuing my conversation with community activist and author Lindsey Barr. And Lindsey, we left speaking about your latest book, which is your first book, 75 Acts of Kindness and Planting a Garden of Kindness. And I know that from there it evolved. The whole journey with that evolved. Can you tell me what happened after you created this book?
Yeah. So the book was kind of the first idea for community building, and then I kept thinking, well, we could try this and we could try this. So what it's grown into is World Changing Kids. An organization that's dedicated to character education, leadership development, and community building through active kindness. And we teach children how to change the world. So one of the founding philosophies of World Changing Kids is that we can explain situations to our kids a lot more than we do, or that society might tell us we should. So real life situations, so homelessness, racism, war, refugees.
Right.
Our kids can handle these topics at a level that they need. You don't want to go over the top. You don't want to show them 24-hour news images that are terrifying, but you give them the basics, and then you give them an action they can take to make it better. So an act of kindness or an action, right? It's social activism and everything with kindness underneath.
Right.
It's kind of the way to do it, yeah. So I kept hearing about all these different, situations and wanted, instead of my children to become anxious and apathetic about how terrible the world is, I wanted to make them feel empowered and passionate and engaged.
Yeah. I love that, actually. I love that. Because I do agree that as parents, especially with young ones, we want to shelter our kids. We don't want them to see disturbing images on TV. We don't want to expose them to the, I don't want to call it harsh realities, but those parts in the world that we think, okay, they're too young, and we don't want to traumatize them, as you said, and we don't want them to feel unsafe. We do want them to continue feeling safe in the world and curious in the world and in their own way empowered to somehow be in the world in a positive way. So I really applaud you for that, because it is important to have these conversations with our kids. And so then tell me how you then moved from that concept of, yes, wanting to do that into an action item, or into a program that they can go with.
Right. So I would actually say the best example of that is the calendar.
Which calendar? Oh, this one here. Yes, of course. Yes. So tell me about this calendar.
Right. So like everything I do, I just kind of have an idea, and I'm like, we should try this. We should do it. So the calendar has 52 important dates listed in it. Has all the other important dates in the calendar year, but the blue ones are highlighted as, important dates. And these include social justice dates, environmental dates, religious celebration.
Yes.
And then for each date, the calendar owner gets a conversation starter emailed to them. And the conversation starter talks about what the date is, who celebrates it, why it's important, and gives actions you can take to honor the date. So again, I had the idea. I didn't really have it fully formed. I put it out, out there, did an Indiegogo campaign for...
Right, because I think this began, how I heard about this is that this began as an Indiegogo campaign to try and raise money so that you could print the calendars, right?
Yeah.
So that started that way.
So I did that, so I raised enough money to do the print run for the calendar, and then I kind of said, okay, let's start with these conversation starters. I don't really know what they're going to look like, but let's do it.
You're a classic entrepreneur in that sense. It's like, oh, what a great idea. I think I'll just jump right in and see what happens.
Yes, and I'm lucky that I have a lot of supporters who are willing to, be the first, the first adopters and help me format it. But I've now done 13 conversation starters. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, World Water Day, Social Justice Day.
World Happiness Day, which was just a couple of days ago. Yep.
Yeah, we did that one. And I'm really, really enjoying it. And I'm really enjoying doing the research and talking about what kids can do at different ages. So it includes things like watch this video to learn more, or you can make a card if it's a religious celebration. This is what you would say to celebrate. So for your neighbor who we did Vietnamese New Year, this is, if you have a neighbor, this is what you could write on the card to them.
Lovely.
So I know parents don't have the time to do this research, because it actually does take me quite a long time. So it's kind of a cheat sheet, and it's supposed to be, you can sit down with your kids over dinner and talk about this day.
Well, what response have you had to this cheat sheet idea of how to engage kids and how to engage parents, actually, in acts of kindness?
Yeah, really, I've had really great feedback, which I'm always flattered when someone actually takes the time to email, you know, that they're enjoying it. So one woman did say she'd never thought about discussing social justice with her children, probably because no one had done it with her. But of course you can, right? And the kids, like, they take to it because children are born believing that life should be fair, right? Like, we took our children out to do a homeless outreach mission, you know, and right away kids know that people shouldn't be sleeping on the street. Like, this is wrong, and they want to help. And it's only, the way I'm looking at it now is we've been taught our whole lives on this issue, for example, for homelessness, to ignore the homeless, to believe that they're addicts and, you know, or there's mental health issues that are way above what we can help with, so don't do anything, right?
Right.
But if you started with kids and you told them it is our responsibility to help, like, what could they do when they're the leaders, right? Like, what lens would they be looking at the issue through differently to actually help?
Right, because that then translates into policies and into laws and into actions that will impact all of society. So let me take it to a personal level. So what do you say to one of your children, let's say to your 7-year-old, when you walk down the street and you do see someone who's homeless or someone who is asking you for money? What would you say to them at that moment?
Right, so I would talk about, you know, never judging that this person is in this situation. It could happen to anyone.
Yeah. You know, and that in itself, I'll tell you, is a huge thing. Just to say, you know, we can't judge because we don't know the whole story.
Right. Yeah, and to start with that, you know, before they form any biases, you just say, nope, we can't. And we say, you know, it's our responsibility to help. So we took it to a bit of a higher level with these 2 homeless outreach missions we've done with the Rwandan Center. And then Bridget Lord from the Bannock bus helped us out with our first one. So we delivered warm clothing and food.
And did the kids come along with you on those rides?
Yeah. So the very first day when we kind of had Bridget, so she's a homeless activist, and we had her to kind of guide us with what is the proper way to do this, what is the respectful way to do this. You know, she knows the community in the market, and so she took us, and she just said, you know, we would go to see a homeless person, we'd get down, you know, make eye contact, and say, we're handing out warm clothes. Is there anything you need? Right? So you put it to them. So then honestly, the children were fighting to like have the turn to like be able to say that to the next person, right? And then they would all pull out, oh, you want a coat? Oh, I think we have coats. And it was a little bit overwhelming actually, I'm sure, because we had like 10 children.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's actually very heartwarming to see, because I do agree with you. I think kids, given the opportunity and given the context, given the proper context and understanding that, you know, you can approach, they are human beings, they are individuals just like you are. And when you set the context for them and you allow them to do that, I so agree that is going to create adults that have that compassion and that have that empathy.
Right.
Good for you. Congratulations.
Yeah,
that's
giving
fantastic.
them a safe environment to practice kindness, right? And then my other kind of founding philosophy is that you never know which area is going to spark an interest in a child, right? You introduce homelessness to a child, is that going to become their life's work, right? You introduce indigenous, social justice, indigenous, issues and reconciliation, right? Like, and the kids will do all of it. Like, they're not against any of it, right?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. You know, I can imagine that this can be such a fulfilling and enriching activity and project.
Yes.
What has been the most satisfying part for you in all of this?
Seeing the change in the children, and especially when it's not even my own children. I'm more touched when I see, you know, the children that I'm taking around with me blossom into these. So, for example, we were at the launch of Kindness Week this year in February, and this is our 3rd time going, and I've brought a crew of kids every time out there. And just to see this year, 4 girls lined up, they went right to the front, sat on the floor to watch, like they're in front of the mayor and the deputy mayor and MPPs, like they don't care, right? Like they know that they are welcome in this space, that this is, and I think that's going to be hugely impactful when they're older too, to know that they deserve a spot at the table, right? Like, of course they do.
And I love that, especially for young girls.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the thing, to see, and to see that some of these girls had been quite shy previously, right? But I've taken them to enough crazy, you know, let's go here, we're going to go to the Women's March together, we're going to even take them to the retirement home to visit with our elders. Like, at first, the girls who tend to be more, a little bit shy, reserved, you know, they stood back, but by the 10th time, they're running in, right? And just the confidence that that builds.
I think that's wonderful. You know, I think what you're doing is something to be applauded, and you know, I think it's great that you keep coming up with these creative ideas and these creative ways to be building a resilient society. Because in the end of the day, we are building societies that are resilient because they are founded on compassion and generosity and looking after one another. You know, would you believe we're coming down to about 2 minutes in our show?
Okay.
I want to ask you a question around success. Okay, and what does success look like to you? Because, you know, as an author, as you know, in addition to an activist, it's easy to be measuring success with numbers and more traditional ways. But I want to hear from you what it looks like for you. How do you know you've been successful?
Right, I can feel successful taking it down to a very basic level where, you know, I remember there was a time we were skating at the rink, and there was a little boy who he was there with another birthday party, so another mom was in charge, but he needed help, and he called me. He was like, Lindsay, can you come, you know, tie my skates? So I would be honored, you know, that you knew my name, that you felt comfortable talking to me. So that's, you know, at those little things every day make me feel successful. Yes.
I think that's great. That's great. More than just the numbers, right?
Yes.
More than just the numbers.
Like the numbers too, though.
The numbers are good.
I gotta get there too. But yeah, the individual basic level, just to see the kids.
Yeah, and I don't want to leave without mentioning that you created a special edition of your kindness book for CHEO.
Yes.
So how did that come about?
Yeah, so I went into CHEO with a number of Valentine cards that had been made by children, and then found out you can't give Valentine cards because of germ and contagion. So, but that turned into a meeting where we came up with a book, 75 Acts of Kindness, some of them specific to CHEO, and then we split the proceeds with CHEO. So I just wanted to be able to give back.
I love that. And you know, I have so many more questions for you, but I'm afraid our time has come to an end this time around. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come in today, for all the things that you are doing to build the kind of world for our children and for all of us to live in, because obviously it's with children that all of these changes begin with. So the website and your information is up on the screen. For those who want to reach you. Thanks again for coming onto the show, and thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode of The Author's Journey, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.